Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are coming together to share their insights and wisdom so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk, co-founder of HLH Growth Solutions. We help businesses scale revenue through utilizing strategic visibility and outside-the-box methods. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. We're excited to have you here. Please make sure you stay to the end because we have a special gift for you. But without delaying this any further, without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today, Kathleen Chan with Calico. So welcome, Kathleen, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Kathleen, can you start us off with sharing a little bit about you, Calico, and your role within the company?
Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Calico. I born in Canada, but kind of grew up in Hong Kong. So a bit of an interesting journey along the way. And Calico focuses on what we call the messy middle of manufacturing. So the best way to think about us is the product creation engine that's changing how brands across the world source globally and produce globally. And so, excited to talk a little bit more about that today, but I'll let you kind of lead the way.
Sounds great. Well, I know that you walked away from a successful DTC brand to solve the quote unquote unsexy but mission critical problem of global sourcing. So what pulled you in that direction and why now?
Yeah, so I started my career off at Microsoft and left it very quickly to kind of get my hands dirty in building. And so naturally at that time, I gravitated towards building brands, building physical goods. And really what sparked most of my interest was figuring out how we could get products from point A to point B to point C effectively, efficiently, and at the right price. And so I kind of did that twice over, but really along the way realized that, while my interest was very much on the underbelly of the business, which was how do we get our products, how does the supply chain work, how do we build that from the ground up, I naturally didn't really gravitate towards the normal things that D2C founders would be paying attention to, like design or, what's coming out next season. And so after doing it twice over, I figured, let's kind of go all in on the actual problem that was keeping me up, until 2 a.m. with an Excel spreadsheet calling halfway across the world with our factories. And so that really was what led me to solve this very unsexy problem, but it is very mission critical. And so I think along the way, it's become more mission critical given the current timeline. But at the time, it was, you're right, very unsexy.
So what did you learn, Kathleen, running a DTC brand that most AI founders don't understand about sourcing and manufacturing?
So I think what was interesting was running both of those D2C brands gave me that really firsthand experience of what it means to actually create products, what it means to walk a factory floor, what it means to actually source and produce. And I think until you've actually experienced that at multiple different volumes and scale, it's really hard to wrap your head around how complex that problem actually is. And I think we can read it in theory. There's definitely that concept of like, I know I send something to a factory, I know somehow it magically gets made and then somehow it naturally lands in the warehouse. There's gaps in that if you're looking at it in theory, that unless you've actually experienced it, it's very hard to really wrap your head around both the gravity of the problem, but also how intense and nuanced and complex this actual, our global supply chains are. And so really doing that D2C experience first, like having my own neck on the line, kind of traveling across the world on my own dime, walking into factories and doing that from the ground up where, my business was actually at stake, gave me that experience firsthand. So I earned the secrets that I think if I just kind of went through the motions or, kind of stumbled across the idea itself, it probably wouldn't, we wouldn't be here in a sense, solving it in the way we're solving it. So especially in a space like this, I think having that nuanced experience is super, super crucial.
You just mentioned doing some things on your own dime. So let's talk about that a little bit, fundraising. So fundraising as a solo female founder in tech can be especially challenging. At female-led businesses, fundraising can be extremely challenging in general. So how did you navigate bias and build trust with top-tier investors?
Everyone's got that fun story. I mean, what was it? 2% of all funding or whatever goes to women. And so that statistic on its own is crazy if you think about that. So daunting. Luckily I didn't know the stat when I kind of dove headfirst into it. Otherwise, unclear how
things might be
how
different.
would have been a little bit different. So I think really at the end of the day, I didn't really see the gender gap until I started fundraising. And whether that's better or for worse, I think we can debate that topic. But you're 100% right. It's very challenging, not only as a solo founder, but also as a female founder, person of color, all those things. I don't fit the mold. And so along the way, really what I gravitated towards are investors that celebrate that rather than folks that saw that as a question mark. And that it was natural in the journey in the sense where you definitely had to pound down doors. I talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of VCs before finding ones that I really clicked with. And I think at the end of the day, it's really not just about having the biggest logo behind you, which 100% those are very, very impactful. But I think when you're thinking about venture dollars or raising money in this sense to grow the business to be, the next $1 billion company, that's a timeline of anywhere between 5, 7, maybe 10 years. And so these are venture investors that are going to be around the table for that period of time. And so it's really important to find the right partner along the way. And so by really just removing kind of the anger behind the bias, but really just optimizing the fundraise for having or really finding the right partners that I wanted to work with for the long term helped me really navigate that. I think at the end of the day, yes, it exists. Yes, I could do nothing to change it at the time. I still can't do anything to change it, but I think by succeeding and finding the right people around the table, it just helps make it a little more impactful.
So what advice would you have, or do you have for underestimated founders who are trying to break into the AI or venture-backed world?
So I think it's always an uphill battle, especially when you're an underrepresented founder. And so I think part of that is just continuously outperform. And it is like whether it's outperforming in traction metrics and finding the right people around the table, just continuously align yourself with outperformance. And I think that will speak for itself over time. I think it's really easy to, as you're kind of fundraising is hard. It's like it's a grueling process. And I think sometimes it's easy to just sit down and give up a little bit, which is 100% okay. It's challenging. But I think just continuously outperform on the business that will allow that traction, those metrics to speak for themselves over time, because at the end of the day, that's really what matters.
So there's a lot going on in the world right now, and a lot of businesses are a little like holding on tightly to their purse strings a little bit with the uncertainty of where things are going. So how are AI, tariffs, and shifting geopolitics changing the future of sourcing, and how is Calico helping brands adapt?
Well, I let's start with tariffs. I think that's that's the meaty one on its own. I think that really, we're how many weeks into this now? Maybe two and a bit, 2 months ish. I think naturally tariffs led to that kind of uncertainty in the supply chain and led to larger, obviously, geopolitical conversations around, what a stable trading partner looks like. And so this has obviously put into question decades-long relationships of not only, who do I work with, but what country and region are stable for the foreseeable future. And so I think that is creating a ton of uncertainty, whether you're in the industry that we're in, which is the apparel, accessories, supply chain, or literally every other supply chain across the world. And so most folks are in the space, or yes, they're moving forward, they're running forward with the information they have, and bracing for honestly infinite levels of uncertainty over the next 4 years. And so those guys are really, really kind of dealing with something very unprecedented. And I think after COVID, after a slew of tariffs, I think people are very well accustomed to chaos right now, which is a testament, but I think it is absolutely shifting balances of what global trade used to look like. And then you layer on AI, which our space here has really the greatest potential to shift and change how global sourcing and even production are done. Naturally, this is a very manual, archaic workflow that today I think is still done predominantly on things like spreadsheets and emails, and it's still a relatively manual industry. And so there's tons of opportunity here for AI to really be the force multiplier for a lot of folks in the space, because I think the one thing we kept hearing across all of this is the only way to solve, or the only way to source globally was through, a whole full fleet of people. And so today, what happens if you give that fleet of people the tools and honestly operating systems to be the force multiplier in their jobs, and so that productivity can really hit new heights. And I think that's very exciting to kind of combat that uncertainty that we all face today.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one sourcing blind spot? Let's talk about some blind spots. So what's one sourcing blind spots that you see even experienced brands or operators are consistently overlooking?
So I think I'll kind of segment this answer because I think it's really changed in the last 2 months, given everything going on, with the tariff timeline. But I think up until that point, many folks were over-indexed on, a small pool of partners that would help the manufacturer, producer, source, like whether it be, a specific region or a specific pool of partners. The second these tariffs kind of like hit the timeline, I think folks realized just how at risk some of the plans that they have been putting in place were. It's really natural, it wasn't uncommon for the actual advice in the space to be like, if you've worked with a partner for the last 10 years, well, that's a solid partner. Well, unfortunately, that today, if that partner happens to be in a specific region that is hit by tariffs, it becomes very untenable to work with that partner, not because they're terrible, but just simply because the economics don't make any sense. And I think not so much what was an actual blind spot, but what the actual biggest pain point today is shifting those supply chains that took decades to build, because that was the going, advice over time. So today, I think that's less of a blind spot, but just more of a need.
Yeah. I'd love to switch gears a little bit and talk about growth, business growth. You've done multiple businesses, so you're not, this isn't your first rodeo, and you've pivoted. So what have been some challenges that you've faced in the growth of your company, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. At Calico ourselves, I think the first little iteration was moving, from being kind of a D2C, bootstrap founder all the way to today, we're venture backed. It's a very different mindset. It came with a lot of really core decisions that had to be made early on to really go after growth. I think when you are taking any kind of venture dollars, the spoken or unspoken goal here is to hit that, unicorn status. Like, you're here to really grow and impact something on a larger scale. And so for normally, if you're going from a bootstrap startup, that's a whole different mindset. If you're not taking any venture dollars, the goal really here is revenues, profits, let's sustain and let's make a profitable business. Whereas I think going into venture, the goal really here is how do we hit $100 million or $1 billion in a rapid amount of time to really impact the market that way. And so that was a bit of a mindset shift for sure in the early days of Calico. Today, we've embraced it fully, obviously, but I think that's one of those changes that early founders should take into consideration as they're thinking about raising a round or thinking about working with venture capital, that, the agreement is you're here to go big, and that is the goal.
So it's really important as you're growing to be seen, right? And so getting really clear on who your ICP is, who's your ideal customer profile, and then, getting out there. And when you're getting out there, sometimes there's a lot of testing involved. We think that, everything we do is going to work, and it doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately. But so what are some of the things that you've done with Calico to make sure that you're getting out there? You're being seen by your ideal customer, and maybe some things that have worked or you're doubling down on maybe this year, and maybe some things that you've tried that haven't worked, that you're like, yeah, we did that, didn't work for us, but it's okay, we learned from it.
Yeah, I think for the space that we're in, obviously being seen and, kind of going to being seen at the right tables and around the right folks is massively impactful. I think how you do it in the beginning actually deeply matters. I think when you are early on in your journey, you have to do things that are slightly unscalable to make sense. And that could be anything. It's not naturally just running ads, hopefully, the leads come in. That's not necessarily always the case, but being thoughtfully strategic about how you get to the right folks. So for us, we, in the early days, assumed that the best way to do that was to host curated events, dinners, things that brought folks around the table. We got great conversations and allowed us to kind of move the needle impactfully. But I think for us, where it became surprisingly, even more impactful was when we started looping in trade publications, right? And I think that was something that was missed early on, because it's not the sexy, let's run ads and like everyone will come in. So, we learned along the way that it wasn't just curating, the right kind of face time, but being around the right ecosystem to kind of bring those folks to the table. So along the way, we evolved into really having a tailored approach, working with industry vets to kind of launch Calico across the hemisphere here. And so that was what worked for us along the way. But we definitely got advice for like run ads, go to networking events, or just like do things that like build a referral program, like things like that are all like small, like strategies and tactics I think in the early days that you should definitely try to see if it works for your business. It didn't work for us, but it's definitely something that I've seen materially impact a ton of different types of businesses.
So what's next for Calico? Kathleen, like over the next 12 months, what are your big goals for Calico, for you and Calico?
I think we're in a moment right now where supply chain has consistently been in focus, not just in the news, but for the everyday consumer. And I think us, in the next 12 months, even maybe slightly beyond that, it is a moment of deep acquisition and growth for us, really kind of bring our solution to the table as a solution for this level of uncertainty. And so we're heads down, really growing. Like that's, all full steam ahead in the next 12 months to do that.
Awesome. So if I could give you a magic wand, and I love this question, I ask everybody because I love the answers I hear. So if I could give you a magic wand and you could go poof on one thing that's happening right now, or one challenge that you're facing that could hold you back from achieving your goals, what would that be and why?
Well, that's a really good question. Many things.
many things.
I mean, look, if I could have a magic wand, I could do a lot of things.
Do a lot of things could happen. Good stuff.
Yeah. So it's strange. I think like for right now, just given the momentum of, both the macroeconomic piece and what we're seeing internally at Calico, I think that like not so much a proof of magic wand for something to go away, but more really like the ability to add additional resources to help us continuously grow is always the top of mind on our end. And how to do it thoughtfully is impactful for us. So less of like what could I subtract, but more what I could add if I had this magic wand, which I assume is infinite in capability. So
yes. Absolutely. So, okay. So last question for you is, if we could come bring you back in a year, Kathleen, and revisit this conversation, what does success look like for you and Calico?
Yeah. So first, I think we have a very measured target of what success and growth looks like internally. And in many ways, a little bit of that, not so much bootstrap nature, but for us, like we are gunning for that profitability line. And so, coming back a year from now, I hope to be able to tell you that we're not only just not break even, but very profitable. That is kind of the end goal here. And so there are revenue targets, logo targets to get there, but it is all centered around the business.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Kathleen, how do people reach out to you and connect with you and learn more about Calico?
Best way is to visit us at calicoai.com or find us on LinkedIn.
Awesome. So we're going to have all of Kathleen's links in the show notes, so you can easily find her, learn more about Calico. Definitely reach out, connect with her, let her know that you heard her here on the Business Growth Spotlight podcast. Go to calicoai.com, go check them out. If you're watching Kathleen and I right now on YouTube, thank you very much. We're happy to have you here. Please drop a comment below. Say hi to Kathleen. Also, hit that subscribe button because that's how we're going to alert you that we have more amazing guests like Kathleen coming on to the show to give you, they're spending their time, taking time out of their busy day of growing their business to share with you what they've learned along the way of the growth of their company. If you know of anybody that would benefit from Kathleen's interview today, our conversation, and learning more about Calico AI, please share that with people you know. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any of the other places, and you can leave a review, we'd love it. 5 stars preferably, and maybe leave a comment. We never know, we'll start reading them on here, shouting you out. We'd love that because it helps the platforms push our episodes out and our amazing guests out to more people to support more business growth in the world. I promised y'all a gift, so I'm going to give that to you right now. If you're looking to get more visible, you're trying some things. Kathleen shared with you what works, what's been working for her, some of the things they've tried that haven't worked. If you're looking for some ideas that you may be like outside the box, then go grab our free Spotlight to Scale blueprint. You can go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint and grab that. Kathleen, before I let you go and we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share that I didn't get to ask you or we didn't touch on today?
No, I think you asked everything. You were great. Thank
Awesome.
you.
See, good day. It's a good day. When we're recording, it's Friday. So happy Friday, y'all. So thank you, Kathleen, for being here. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your day and sharing your wisdom with us and your amazing company, Calico, with us. And for those of you listening, make sure you reach out to Kathleen. Go check out calicoai.com. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlights.